Hello everybody, welcome back. We got the transmission on the Jaguar finally. Took a little while to rebuild it. Never rebuilt 4L60E. Wanted to rebuild it the right way, so I paid attention and did some videos. All that stuff. Fun things happened. We also weighed the transmission, so we'll see that today. And funny story about the whole process of putting the John's Cars kit on the engine is I accidentally installed the flywheel backwards. Doi. And went to go put the flywheel starter on, and that's when I realized the flywheel was on backwards. Had to take the whole thing apart, put it back together. Luckily, the second time you do things, right, it goes quick. It was only but maybe 2.5, 3 hours to flip the flywheel and put it back on. So without further ado, here's the work we've done over the last couple of weeks. All right, so here is the 4L60E transmission that we're going to be swapping into the project. It's nothing fancy. It's out of some random car from the junkyard. It is a 95 model, so it needs to use the on-off type torque converter lockup as opposed to the pulse width modulation lockup. So I need to use a different tuner for this system than I originally had planned on using. So I know the engine control unit Mega Squirt 3 also makes a 4L60E controller, so I might just use those two together as opposed to the TCI controller, whatever. We'll figure that out later. I'm looking forward to getting into the tuning of this car. It's something I want to get more involved with, but nothing fancy here, just a B&M torque converter. It's like a 2,500 RPM stall converter. Again, as everybody says, don't take that stall number as the gospel for that torque converter. Everybody's got different weight and transmission setup, or sorry, weight and gear ratio rear end for their car, so that's going to change that stall speed a little bit. Could go up, it could go down based on what your vehicle's inputs are. And then here is the kit that we're going to be using to put the 4L60E onto the Jaguar V12. So this is the John's Cars quarters breed kit. There you go, John's Cars. So you can buy these. They're about $750, I think. No, I'm not going to take measurements on this. If you want to know what the measurements are, give John $750. It also comes with the transmission adapter plate and the transmission mounting unit. So it also comes with a bunch of bits and bobbles, right? So really all I'm going to be using are these here. These go on the torque converter and they attach to the flywheel, and I'll be using the plates, and I'll be using the adapter that mounts to the crankshaft for the V12, and then this goes on your B&M, or sorry, just your torque converter like that. There you go, right? So that fits there, and then this piece here fits into the V12 crankshaft, and it sits flush, and everything's great and wonderful. And then you have a 4-speed transmission behind your car. The other parts that come with John's kit are things like some brackets for relocating the transmission, filler tube, and some other bits and bobbles and things like that. A lot of this stuff we're not reusing because it's designed for a 700R4 kit. He does not sell a 4L60E kit, only a 700R4 kit. So you get some electronics like this and things like that to make everything work with your TV cable and your yuckity mucks and your this and your that. But we're going fully electronic here, so we're not using a lot of that stuff. We're mostly just going to be using this and some brackets for the filler tube. All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing weighed. We are now going to weigh the 4L60E transmission. So let's go ahead and turn it on. And I tried to bundle up as much of the chain as necessary. This is a dry transmission, so there is no oil in here, but we do have the torque converter installed, so you will see that in the weight. Let's go ahead and turn this on. It's going to zero out with mostly your chains mostly unassociated to the weight. So let's go ahead and start jacking up. We are plenty off the ground here with the transmission. You can see it's swing. So let's go ahead and let it settle down. We're floating roughly around 157 pounds. So if we remember from earlier videos where we measured the engine weight and transmission, we're about 215 pounds for the Jaguar transmission. So we're saving about 60 pounds and we're getting an extra gear. So win-win. Another modification you need to do to the 4L60E is drill this small hole in the bell housing to allow you access to the starter bolts, because the starter bolt is now going to mount directly to the engine instead of mounting to the outside of the bell housing, because in the regular Jaguar V12, the starter bolts mount to the outside of the bell housing here and there. So instead of being on the outside of the bell housing for the Jaguar transmission, we are now mounting directly to where the engine would be, right on the other side of this. And so you need access to the upper bolt. Now the lower bolt you can do by removing the shield on this slanted bell housing area here. You would remove the shield and you can have access to the lower bolt. But to get to the upper bolt, you need to go through the hole. Am I a fan of drilling big holes through bell housings? Absolutely not. We've now got to figure out how to block this hole off so we don't get water and dirt and grit and grind into the transmission. But that should be a relatively simple solution. And that's it. That's the only modification to the 4L60E that you need to do in terms of getting it to mount to the Jaguar V12. Here is the torque converter adapter for the crankshaft. You notice that when it's on properly, it sits flush with the crankshaft. And for this particular piece, the pilot piece that goes into the crankshaft itself was a little too thick, so I had to turn it down on a lathe. These are a press fit item, so you should be installing it with a hammer. If you're not installing with a hammer, it's too loose. And then there's also a set screw in there that you tighten to make sure that that gets a really good press fit. But again, on mine, it was a little too thick and it would not go in no matter how much banging you did. So I had to turn it down on a little bit on the lathe, and then a good whack with a hammer, a couple whacks, and it's set in. So that's it. John Carr's kit, you have to remove these dowels. So to do so, he provides a tap right here. Tap, and you just tap this guy here. You use a socket and the provided bolt, and you just tighten that on top of the dowel till it's removed and it comes out. Now some older Jaguars or some other models might come with a solid dowel pin, which the kit says you can remove. Mine came with the regular dowel pins, and they will be replaced with these dowel pins here, which are correctly sized for fitting through the adapter plate into the block, through the adapter plate, and into the transmission. Here's what the adapter plate looks like with the dowels installed, and these are torqued down. So just make sure that when you do this, you want to make sure that this hole right here is available for the starter bolt to go through. Alright, so one thing I've noticed about this kit is the transmission and the adapter kit don't quite match at this upper point here. Would have been really nice if this was triangularized with the transmission. You can see I have a flashlight on the other side. You could just kind of see through there a little bit. So it's not a lot. It's a slither of a crack. I'll fill it in with some silicone gasket maker and we'll press on. So underneath the car, you have to remove these two tabs. So you got to remove this one here, and you've also got to remove this one on this side, this one here. So the one I'm touching right there. Okay, so that gives you space so the transmission can fit up into the car, because the tail of the transmission will hit that tab and that tab. So you remove those two tabs, and then otherwise, a test fit looks like it clears the tunnel everywhere. I don't think I'm going to need to hit anything in the tunnel, and then we should begin business to slide it in when we're ready to start getting test fits within the engine. And it's down the road a couple weeks. So here are those brackets that we just removed. These are the bolt-on style brackets. Supposedly earlier model cars, these were welded on, I guess, and you have to literally cut them off, but these just unbolt, and they touch the transmission right on the back side of the pan area here. So they'll just kiss it a little tiny bit, not a lot, but enough to where you can't get it to sit up flush when you're trying to mount it. Okay, so here is the transmission installed on the engine, finalized on the engine there. You'll notice it fits pretty well. The dowel pins work great. We can show you here underneath the spacer that goes in between the torque converter and the flywheel. So that's how you get the additional space taken up. That would be from here and the John's kit adapter. The dipstick, what you do with that is you bend it a little bit, you modify it. He sends a pre-bent one that's already done for you, so this is using his pre-bent one, and then I reused the original bracketry here that this would mount to. I just got to get new O-ring that just disintegrated like everything else that's rubber on this car from when I bought it. I have not finalized it yet because I do have to take it back out to do the O-ring. So the other thing that he sends with the kit is he sends these little adapters. The lower one works pretty good. I cannot get the top one to match up or anything, so I'm either going to have to bend the original tube, or I can maybe bend this down some. That's going to be kind of hard, but that's what needs to be done there. It will hit here if I just leave it as is. So I gotta figure out what to do with this. But really that's the only issue I've had. Everything else was pretty easy in terms of getting the transmission onto the engine. There wasn't any really snags. I mean, you have to drill this hole and do a couple other things and this and that, but all in all, it's not terrible. With everything said and done, I think this kit is pretty easy to install. It wasn't really there wasn't any surprises with the adapter kit. He sends pretty much everything you need. You do have to do some fidangling with things and that like that. It wasn't a perfect 100% easy peasy thing. There was a couple things I don't like having to fill the gap in here, whereas this could have just been made bigger. And these things here, I mean, that's just annoying, but whatever. I do have to modify the factory 4L60E dust cover that goes in here, right? So that's what I'm going to do later. I'm not too worried about it right now. I just wanted to get the test fit in there. Give you guys some details of where we're at with the project. So right now we have the engine and the transmission together, and now we can start actually getting this car put back together. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. A lot of work still to do. We got to do exhaust. We got to put the engine and transmission in the car, wire it up, buy ECUs. That's about a $2,000 bill this month. So we also need to do Still have a lot of little details left in the engine. I got to put the accessories on, a few little bits and bobbles here and there, spark plugs, things like that. So it'll go quick, but it'll go slow at the same time, right? Tedious things. But that's it for today. So I'll leave you with the joke. What does a pirate pay for ear piercing? $1 a year. Huh.